I guess I have to almost do some apologetic type things when I get into this because I feel like I'm a very blessed person, and it's not because I've not had some tragedy in my life. I have as y'all have, but I am tremendously blessed. I have a wife who loves me, who believes in me, who puts up with my many shortcomings and failures. She's a very tolerant person, very patient person, or she couldn't make it living with me because I make a lot of mistakes. But I have a loving wife. I've got 2 great sons, and now the family and daughter-in-law, and my mom's still living, and 3 of my siblings are still living, and I've got you people, which you have made my life so rich and so wonderful and so blessed, and in so many different ways, it's just beyond measure. Tammy often says, it's not fair that you have 3 jobs and you love all of them. And most people are stuck with one and they hate it. But there is some truth in that. Hopefully that you see that I do love what I do here. I thank my students. Josh is here. I love what I do there. I think it comes out there. And I think my clients feel like I love what I do with them too as well. So Rosalind gets to see a little piece of that because she works in our office. So I am very, very blessed. For one person in my number of years, I can count my blessings, and they just go on and on and on. So I have to sort of apologize preaching a lesson about dreams dying because I don't think I can say that many of my dreams have been unmet. Certainly there were goals and things, aspirations that I had for myself, but when I look back on my life, I'm far much further along than I ever thought I would be. And so I feel like somewhat not quite as qualified about talking about failed dreams as maybe other people. And I just that's my apology into this and stuff, because I feel like I'm extremely, fortunately, a blessed person. But nonetheless, this lesson is about when dreams die. What do you do in the face of loss? What do you do in face of tragedy? And so this is sort of where we're going this morning with this text. So to put some context to the book of Ruth. Early authorship been attributed to Samuel. Some modern scholars sort of question that, but we often believe that Samuel probably wrote the book. If at a very specific time, there were a lot of things going on in the nation. There was intermarriage that was taking place, and some people didn't know how to take that. They didn't like the idea of Jews marrying non-Jews, if you will. They didn't like the idea of that. So that was a sort of a cultural thing going on at that point in time. And so it served a lot of different purposes. It appeared to be a very popular book in the post-exile period, and maybe that was very important too. It was a book that was accessible to them and they could read. But so the context, though, of the book of Ruth is famine had struck Bethlehem and that area of Judea, and it forced the people to leave. And so a husband and wife decided to take their 2 sons and they moved to Moab, the neighboring nation. And if you sort of do the genealogy stuff, Moabites were some distant kin to the Jewish folk, but not close. Okay, so like distant ancestors. But so they go to the Moabites and they lived there. The rains had come to Moab. There was grain to eat. There was food there. So they had moved there. And while in this strange country, their sons apparently got of age, and they start looking around for girls to marry. That happens. And so the only girls to marry in Moab were what? Moabites. Okay. Now, Moabites did not honor Yahweh God. They were sort of into idols and into other things. I mean, they didn't necessarily believe in just one God. They believed in different things. It was sort of believe in whatever you want to believe, sort of like our culture today. Whatever you want to believe in, that's fine. So Moabs were sort of more loosely connected through this sort of this diversity type thing. But nevertheless, their daughters marry these 2 Moabite women. So that sort of sets the context. So let's just look for a moment about this idea is what happens when your dream dies. I'm sure that perhaps, the move to Moab was a temporary move. I mean, they said, well, when the crops come in, we'll go back home. And then it didn't happen. And the boys are now marrying age. They were there 10 years. Now the boys are marrying age, and they maybe had dreamed that they'd marry a nice Jewish girl and settle down, and they'd go to Shabbat dinner at their house or whatever. But it didn't happen that way. They married Moabite girls, and maybe there was even at that they accepted that, And then there would be the hope of grandchildren. Maybe they sat back and Naomi and her husband sat back, Abimelech, and they sat back and talked about, well, one of these days we'll have grandkids, and won't that be fun? And, we'll retire and settle down, and they'll come visit, and won't that be great? And tragedy struck. He dies. I mean, and you've been there. Some of you have lost spouses. You know when the dream died. Oh, you had plans. You had dreams. You were going to do. And all you had to look at was an empty chair, an empty side of the bed. That just seems to be such a burden. And then it's almost as it's incomprehensible what happens next. Both sons die. All the dreams of grandkids and genealogies, and it's gone. You've been there. Maybe it was illness. Maybe it was a diagnosis. Maybe it was an empty bank account. Maybe it was death. Maybe it was divorce. Maybe it was whatever it was that happened. You had plans. You had dreams, and they died sometimes in a moment, without any preparation, without a plan B or C or D, because all your hopes and dreams were put on this one thing, and it was gone. Dreams are important. Dreams are important because sometimes they're the only thing you hold on to when everything else is falling apart. Maybe it will be different or better in the future. The Bible has never been anti-dream. Just ask Joseph. Just ask Jesus in his dream of a kingdom of people who generally love each other, who glorify God and care for one another in a way that's so meaningful the world is drawn to them. But there's been some people I have known in my life that seem particularly burdened and troubled by disaster. One thing after another. And we used to say in my family, my mother would say, we are so blessed because so many other families, have to deal with cancer and illness and sickness. And then the next thing we know, we begin to experience cancer and illness and sickness and death. But some people just seem to be, it's something all the time. So what happens if you feel like you're in that season? Or what happens if you feel like you're that person who walks around with a cloud of doom over you? Does God even care? Does the Bible even speak to that? And I'm going to say, yes, it does. In the story of two women who lived many, many centuries ago in a faraway land who knew what it was to have their dreams die. It's a story of loss. It's a story of faith. It's a story of loss tempered by faith. What happens? Or maybe I have it inverted. Maybe it's faith tempered by loss. Tammy and I, we took courses this week at the Craft Center. There were several different courses going on, but when we were down there, they take to all the different studios and everything like that. And so they took us to a blacksmith shop, which I was sort of intrigued with. And maybe one day I'll go take a blacksmithing course because it was real intriguing. But one of the things they do down there, they get the metal in the forge and they get it red hot. I mean, just red hot. Just hot. And then shh. And they made that metal a little bit harder. And they do it the same thing again. They get it red hot again. And shh. Called the tempering process. And every time they heat it up and cool it down, and heat it up and cool it down, heat it up, cool it down, it gets a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. Or we would say stronger. So maybe there's some people that have the faith they have today, not because it's been rosy, hunky-dory, easy go for them. Maybe they have the faith they have today because they've been to that tempering process of hearts broken and dreams dying and the forging, the tempering of their faith through loss. And if your person says, listen, I can count my losses easier than I can count my faith, maybe you need to know Ruth. And maybe you need to know Naomi. And see what they do in face of this. So the text was read, but I'll read it again just to put it in context. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. So we sort of had the historical time period. It is during the days of the judges. So we have Samson and all those other dudes and dudettes. And we have Dinah and some of those other people that are mentioned in the book of Judges. So it was during the days of Judges. There was a famine in the land, and the certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the man's name was Elimelech. The name of his wife's name was Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephraimites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab, and the name of one was Orpah, and the other one was Ruth. And they dwelt there for about 10 years, And then in verse 5, then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So the women survived by her 2 sons and her husband. So here we have the story. I mean, Samuel, whoever wrote it, did a really good setup. There's a little bit of irony. If you don't know what the word play here, there's a little irony and stuff. Bethlehem is taken from 2 words that are put together. And so when they translated the word Bethlehem, they just took an equivalent English letter to match up to a Greek letter, to a Hebrew letter. So and that's how we get Bethlehem. They put 2 words together. The first word, Beth, actually means, in Hebrew it's bait, and it means house. So it means house. Bait means house. So they put bait with another word, lechem. Beit lechem. Bethlehem. So you see how it came together. Yeah. Lechem means bread. It's the Hebrew word for bread. So bait means what? House. And lechem means bread. So you've learned 2 Hebrew words today. So you can't say you didn't want anything bait lechem. Okay? House of bread. So the house of bread has no bread. Irony, isn't it? So the city was known to be the bread basket has no bread. So they have to go someplace else. So they go someplace else. I mean, there's another dream dead, right? They probably thought we were going to go old in Bethlehem at home. Sit on the front porch. Drink iced tea if they drink iced tea. I don't know. But they had dreams of being there, and crops failed. There was nothing to eat. We got 2 kids to raise. We got to go find some. In Moab, they got some bread. And we go to Moab. So they leave Moab, they go there, and what happens? Tragedy and tragedy and tragedy. 3 pronounced tragedies. And it seems that this family is burdened beyond normal. Death destroys dreams 3 times in this family. Death's not the only thing that can destroy dreams. A lot of things, sickness, injury, disability, a lot of things destroy dreams. I do disability evaluations for Social Security. That's part of what I do in my practice. So I meet with people who are applying for disability. I do the psychological aspect of their evaluation. And there's a part of the evaluation that's called activities of daily living. And so I want to know, what do you do every day? What time you get up? What time you go to bed? Do you cook? Do you clean house? What do you do? Something like that. But I also ask this question. What do you do for leisure? What do you do in your free time? What do you do for fun? What do you do to pass the time? And more often than not, I get this response. Nothing. Meaning you do nothing? Do you watch TV? Well, I might watch TV. Do you have hobbies? I don't have hobbies. You don't do. And I legitimately believe that many of these people are telling me the truth. They do nothing. Their dream had died, and they do nothing. They dreamed of working to a certain age or being productive to a certain point, and so they do nothing. Because they're in this limbo between death and life, waiting for death, but not living. I think that can happen. I think people can get so despondent they just give up. And so the challenge is that what do you do when your dreams die? I mean, here they are. I mean, you can't get much deader than 3 obituaries. So what do you do? What does one do when all they hope for is gone? Give up? That's an option. Giving up? That's an option. What do you do? Recast dreams? Get a new dream? What do you do? She's a widow. Her husband's dead. And that, it wasn't like in our culture when she got the death certificate for her husband, she went down to the Social Security office and signed up for Social Security, benefits. There was no such thing as that. She had 2 healthy boys. They'll provide for me. Well, one of those died. Well, the last one provided me. He's dead. What does she have? She has nothing. I mean, in that culture, women and women are supposed to really own property. Her future is dismal at best. I mean, when you look at the first crisis the early church experienced was, what do we do with the widows? That was the very first crisis that they had in the church. What do we do with the widows? We're calling all these people to Christ. We've got a bunch of women who have no support, who have no means. And so what does the church do? We'll take care of them. Appoint 7 men. Make sure they're taken care of. So what does one do when everything they hope for? And here's the truth. Some people get bitter and others get better. It's your choice. You can get bitter when dreams die, or you can get better when dreams die. Bitter or better. I'll tell you this story. Some of you don't know this. Let's say, we got about 14, 15-year-old here. Anyone 14, 15 years old? Raise your hand. Yeah, there we go. Okay. When you asked me when I was your age, what are you going to do when you grow up? You know what I would tell people? I'm going to be a veterinarian. I would tell everyone, I'm going to be a veterinarian. I want to be a veterinarian. Because I liked animals. I thought that was sort of neat, like being around animals. The only thing I didn't know about being a veterinarian is you had to be smart. Liking animals wasn't enough. You had to be good at something called math, which I was never good at. And you had to take things like chemistry, which required math. You had to do all these things that required math. So guess what? I wasn't devastated because that dream died. I still, if you go down to my basement, I have a toolbox called veterinarian box. And I've got all these veterinarian tools in there because I used to practice on my own animals. I never got quite good at suturing, but I could do most everything else. I got, all kinds of little vet box and so on. I always liked to impress Tiffany Krantz when she came to the house. I had my own box. Oh, you need something? She's a traveling veterinarian, so yeah. But that's what I was going to do. I wasn't devastated because I had other things to temper that. So I didn't get bitter. I got better. God had other plans for me. And so you have a choice. You can get bitter or better. Now, what did Naomi do? She's a widow. She's beyond her years. It doesn't sound like she thought she could get another man, because sort of the advice she's going to give, Charles is going to deal with a little bit next week. But so here's what happens. Then she arose. If your heart is broken because of a broken dream, get busy. Don't wallow in it. It does you no good. It does no one else any good. Get busy. get up. She arose. I'm sure she had her space of grieving, which you need to do, but listen, this woman got up. She got out of her circumstance with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, because it really wasn't home. That she heard that in the country of Moab, while she was living in Moab, the rumor got, hey, it's rain in Bethlehem. They have bread again. So what happened is that she said the Lord had visited the people by giving them bread, so it rained again in Bethlehem, so the harvest is coming in. Therefore, she went out from the place where she was. Sometimes a broken dream requires a change in location. How many times did God tell someone, get up and go someplace else? Remember Elijah in the cave, wishing he'd ever been born? And God says, go. Sometimes you have to get up and move. Therefore, she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. So she gets up, she begins packing. They said, where are you going, Naomi? She says, I'm going back to Bethlehem. So they says, well, they start packing too. Well, let me grab a few things and I'll go with you. So they began going. Naomi's dream is going home. She's now changed dreams. Says, let me get home to my people. And maybe when I die, I can be buried with my people. That was her new dream. Okay? And so she's going home. And so Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go return each to her mother's house. Go, you 2 girls go back to mama. Basically, I'm not your mama. You go back to your mama. The Lord dealt kindly with you as you dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. So basically, she says, girls, you don't need to go with me. Go back home to mama, and may God be good to you. May he deal kindly with you just because of what you did. Now, as I read the text, I really began wondering, just how did these men die? Because there wasn't war. They didn't die like in battle. It made me wonder if there was some kind of sickness, some kind of prolonged sickness that these women honored her by taking care of her sons during an illness. Because she said, you dealt kindly with the dead and with me. That somehow they showed honor to her sons. You were kind to them. And you're kind to me. And so she blesses them. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. In other words, you girls go on and get married again. You have my blessing. Go back to mama. Find you a good Moabite boy and settle down. You've got my blessing. You've done me good. You've fulfilled your obligation to me. You dealt kindly with the dead. You can't help them anymore. And you dealt good with me. You've done good by me. Go on, girls. So Naomi chose to keep her faith in God in spite of all her losses. Did you see that? The Lord dealt kindly with you. She's asking her God to be good to these girls, which they didn't necessarily worship the same God. You'll discover that a little bit later. Charles is going to deal with the text next Sunday. They didn't worship the same God she worshiped. But she says, my God be good to you. Her faith was still in God. I mean, in fact, she's asking God. She chose to keep her faith in God in spite of her losses. In spite of a dead husband and 2 dead sons and dreams dead, she chose to keep her faith in God. I've had folks who've gone through a whole lot more than I ever went through in my life that tells me, so I take it to be true, that sometimes the only thing that gets you through it is your faith. That's all. How do you do it? Faith. How do you get faith? How did you faith? You interview some folks who've been through some hard times, and they'll tell you it's their faith that sustained them. It's their faith that got them through. Now, a question: where did such faith come from? where did Naomi get this? We don't have much about her background. We know she's from Bethlehem, tribe of Judah, as was her husband. Ephraimites. Okay, remember they were, the two sons got to develop. Manasseh and Ephraim got a share. Joseph, his two sons got shares. So that's what you get that. That's how they subtract Levites and you wind up division of the land. So you had to get another, so it's 12. So where did such faith come from? And I would suggest to you this morning that her faith came from perhaps the Word of God. Because I found 3 scriptures that she would have had access to more than likely during her time span. Maybe one of them is questionable because it may have came a little bit later. But 2 definitely. Deuteronomy 31:6. What does it say in the book of Deuteronomy? Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear, nor be afraid of them, referring to the inhabitants of the land that they're going into. For the Lord your God, He is the one who goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. That's what the children of Israel were told by Moses, that God will not leave you nor forsake you. And that's not good enough. 2 more verses down. Verse 8. And the Lord, He is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. From the Word of God, we get this promise. God will not leave you nor forsake you. Hebrews chapter 13 will repeat this again for us in case we didn't get it from the book of Deuteronomy. He will not leave us nor forsake us. In fact, Joshua also said it. That's what I'm saying. Maybe Joshua was a little bit later than her. Joshua chapter 1 verse 8. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life, God says to Joshua. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Now, how many times does God have to say it for it to be true? 1 time. Is 4 times enough for you? God will not leave you nor forsake you. So what do you do when dreams die? You realize in faith that God will not leave me nor forsake me. Naomi chose to put her faith in God even when all she dreamed for had died. Sometimes faith simply looks like loyalty. Being loyal to God, being loyal to Him as your provider, as your sustainer, just being faithful to God. Faithfulness and loyalty sometimes is what faith looks like in the face of loss. There's an interesting concept. There's 2 or 3 really big, important Hebrew concepts in the book of Ruth. This is one of them. And you'll see this over and over again. Charles is going to deal with it a little bit next week. The word hesed. Say the word hesed for me. Hesed. So you learn the word bait and you learn the word lekem. Now you word hesed. That's the 3rd Hebrew word you learned today. You're great scholars. Okay. Hesed means blessing. But it means more than just a general blessing. It means blessing beyond measure. It means blessing beyond expectation. So Naomi blessed her daughters-in-law. She said that the Lord deal kindly with you. She blessed them. Lord be gracious. The Lord deal kindly. She blessed them in doing that. So she wanted good for them, even more than she had experienced. She wanted them to go home and to marry and to have families. She wanted that for them. She wanted them to have more than what she even had. This Hesed this Hesed blessing is a type of loving kindness that goes beyond what's required by law or duty. It is choosing to act without expectation. We understand that God has Hesed love for us. That's the big theme of the Old Testament. God's Hesed love for us. He loves us regardless. He loves us when we're good. He loves us when it's bad. He loves us when we're behaving ourselves. When we're not. God loves Hesed. Naomi shows Hesed love for her daughters-in-law. Go home. Now she could say, now I'm old, you take care of me. She could have. They were supposed to, honor their elders. But she says, you go home, you marry. I guess to bring it to a close, when your dreams die, you have a choice to get what? Bitter or what? better? I don't know. Some of you got broken dreams. Some of us have disappointments. That's me not being veterinarian is really a very minor disappointment now. Very minor. I used to read books. James Herriot wrote this series of books. He was a veterinarian in England prior to World War II. I read every one of them twice, 2 or 3 times. Just found it fascinating. But many may have had other losses that really self-defining. You can choose to be bitter about it, or you can get better. Now, bitterness comes through having faith in God and acting out of loyalty to God, because God is loyal. God is faithful. He will not leave you nor forsake you. He will always be there. He will not abandon you. Now, the reason dreams die is because we live in a broken world, or sometimes dreams die because they're not what God wants for us. And sometimes we have to be tempered through losses. You want an abiding, strong faith, but it's not something you can go to Walmart and buy and get it's ready to use out of the box. You know those things, and you go to, kids' toys, some assembly required. You go down to Walmart to buy a piece of furniture and it's in a box. Oh, we'll get that for you. Wait a minute. That's display. This is yours. You got to do something with it. We want instant faith, but sometimes faith has to be tempered through loss. If you're here this morning, we can assist you. Brother Steve's going to lead us in a song at this time. Give you an opportunity to respond if your subject which comes we stand and sing.